Major support for these broadcasts is provided by the CUNY TV Foundation, New York Community Bank, Chase Commercial Term Lending, Chelsea Lighting, Capital One Bank, Genova Burns, Giantomasi and Webster, Kilroy Architectural Windows, New York's Window Company, the Wickoff Group, Greenberg Traurig, M&T Bank, Perfect Building Maintenance. Additional support is provided by Ackman Ziff Real Estate Group, Bank of America Merrill Lynch, Briarwood Organization, C.B. Richard Ellis, Colliers International New York, Cushman & Wakefield, Dime Savings Bank of Williamsburg, Douglaston Development, Levine Builders, DDG, Friedman LLP, Accountants and Advisors, Flushing Bank, Herrick Feinstein LLP, Investors Bank, James D. Kuhn Real Estate Center at Syracuse University, James Orphanides, Centurion Holdings, John Katsimatidis, Red Apple Group, Korman Communities, a.k.a. Hotels, Madison Realty Capital, Margolin Weiner and Evans, LLP, Certified Public Accountants and Business Advisors, Massey Knackle Realty Services, New Banks, Meridian Capital Group, Newmark Grubb Knight Frank, Popular Community Bank, Sterling & Sterling, SJP Properties, Stonehenge Partners, and these friends.
So here it is. It's the magic apple, 2013. Is it going to be polished really nice, or is it going to be dim? I don't know, but I got these four gurus who are going to tell their opinion of how 2013 is going to be. My guests include Ofer Yardeni, who is the co-CEO and chairman of Stonehenge Partners, Michael Pappagallo, who is the executive VP and chief operating officer of Kimco Realty, Larry Korman, who is the president of AKA and co-president of the Korman Communities. And last but never least, the counselor to all of these individuals, my good friend Rob Ivanhoe, who is the chairman of global real estate for the law firm of Greenberg Traurig. Since you are the only person who is not selling or buying properties today,
that would be true.
Okay, how do you look at the market?
Well, you know, it's interesting here in New York, there are very few large transactions that have been done in the last year, and there are very few large things coming to market. There are two large buildings that have been marketed, and the strength of the market for large transactions hasn't really been tested.
You know, I think what you're saying is perhaps more in the office market.
Yeah.
Because the office market today, if we want to have a look at the past 12 months on the office market, we've had a lot of office space in New York, and we also had a lot of renewals. There were more renewals. I mean, Viacom, 1.6 million square feet, Morgan Stanley, 1.2 million square feet. So people stayed, and people, you know, use more efficient space. But when you talk about purchases of residential buildings, you were on fire in 2012. I mean, you lost your hair over there. I mean, you used to have a couple more strands, but how do you look at 2012, 2013, Mr. Yardeni?
I think, first of all, that 2012 was an amazing year for us at Stonehenge, and a lot of it, of course, is thanks for my great lawyer that helped us close those transactions and brought us some of those transactions.
And I know that you're trying to get into the hotel business with Larry and some apartments, and maybe retail with Mike.
Hotel was always my passion. In fact, I believe that we are in a hotel, in the hospitality business, with all our buildings. The fact is that we don't have leases for a night, we have leases for a year. But the kind of services that we provide and the amenities and the way we treat our tenants, it's like a hotel industry.
Okay? No. I have the residential guy, I have the retail, I have the hotel and also hospitality, and I have the counselor.
So from where we see and what we experienced in 2012, with 1% vacancy, with no new construction for residential, for rental, and with the fact that 50% of our tenants are coming from outside of New York. And we believe that 2013 is going to be a record year for rents in our industry. So if we see no new construction and more people are coming, rents are increasing, cap rates are decreasing, financing is available, and this is why we continue to buy, and we will continue to be aggressively looking for opportunity on a value add on the multifamily.
It sounds like a perfect storm. But when I walk around and go to some holiday parties and other things, and I hear some of Rob's contemporaries, I was at the Boy Scout lunch, oh, it's 2006, it's 2007, it's happy days here again. I remember 2008 happened. You know, so how long is this? I mean, Larry, how's the hospitality business? Let's take the New York City hospitality business, and then let's talk about the AKA and the...
We're very bullish about 2013, and we're very bullish about New York City. 2012 was a very, very good year. It was a year that started out a little slow. We were a little nervous about how the year was going to go, but the second, third, fourth quarter have been very, very strong. The rates have gone up. From our perspective, we had a little added strength in that we continue to brand the AKA concept. So there's more people giving us more opportunity. Even when the nadir of the 2008 hit, we were continuing to be that alternative to hotels or to longer length stay options. So it was a very good year for us. Expenses continue to go up in New York City, even in the down economy. So the rates are really getting to a level in 2013 where I think we're at a break-even level. So we really view 2012 as having built a strong foundation, and 2013 as taking that next step forward.
Retail. Everybody's been, retail, especially in New York City, is at record levels. Retail properties are selling $8,000 a square foot, $9,000. I mean, on prime properties. Even, I just noticed Arcadia just sold a property in Canarsie with the BJ's at a high price to another REIT. How do you see the retail market, Mike?
Well, first put aside New York, because what New York has is density, infill, very little supply available. But I think the number one issue that's benefited retail real estate over the past 2 years has been essentially no new construction. And I think the development starts are at 40-year lows. Now that, of course, is driven by the fact that there aren't a lot of rooftops going up and there isn't a lot of greenfield development available. The numbers don't pencil out. But what that's essentially meant is that the growing retailers are now looking at second and third generation space, generally in infill markets, not only coastal, but just strong markets in general. And that's helped to really recalibrate the supply-demand equation between
now
landlords
you're
and
the
retailers.
largest owner of community shopping centers.
Open air.
Open air. How do you see anyone building more open air in other parts of the country, or what's the status on open air?
What we see an increasing amount of is what you would call a phase two or an add-on development on an existing property, really driven by the demand from many of the national retailers. One of the things to consider is that coming out of the recession, there was the usual fallout of the weaker retailers and the weaker in certain formats. But the strong got stronger. They repaired their balance sheets, they're very conservative with cash, and now they're growing again. Maybe not growing to the heyday of 2005, 6, and 7, but nonetheless, they are growing and they are absorbing available space. So what that's enabled landlords to do who have the ability to add an out parcel or to add contiguous square footage at a center, now they can do it because they have the demand. That's what we're seeing much more of.
Here's a point, that I want you to answer, and Rob can also answer. Retail in Manhattan, and because you only know Manhattan. I know you grew up in Israel, but you stopped just it was Manhattan. You never learned to go to Brooklyn when we've tried. Even lower Manhattan has been hard for you.
Absolutely.
And you've acquired a number of properties on 2nd Avenue this year. You have large retail over there right near the Ed Koch Bridge. I call it the 59th Street Bridge. How do you see, who's renting in those type of places? I assume that they're different than the tenancy in the Kimco places.
I don't know exactly what Kimco is renting, but being the largest, I'm sure they have every tenant in
No, but
country.
I believe you
But
have an urban retail.
we have,
type of retail.
so for us, the retail is, of course, the banks. Whenever you have a corner that is available in New York, a bank would like to come and to rent it, and usually they take somewhere between 3,000 to 5,000 square feet. So that's a great anchor tenant that you want to have. Then you have, of course, the restaurants, and you have the fashion. So if it's 9th Avenue, you have a lot of restaurants, a lot of glass stores, and wine. It's the local tenant. We are not looking, when we rent, for the best credit in the world. We are looking for the tenant that can add the most aesthetic to the building and that can afford to pay the rent. So if it's a restaurant or it's a nice eyeglass or it's a hairdresser, it's a local store. It doesn't need to be a chain. That's not what we are looking for.
How about financing? You know, we were talking prior to the show that, you know, going back to 2006, 2007, there was the world of the conduits. And the securitization is definitely up. Goldman is doing larger securitizations. And I don't know, you know, we can all phase in on the financing. I mean,
this year will be over, they're now saying $42 billion of securitized debt will be issued this year, which is the highest.
Which is up from
since
27
'07.
million last year.
27 million last year, a billion last year, and I think in 08 and 09 it was virtually zero.
Right, $10 billion.
Yeah, so it's still not close to the 230 billion of
But how do you
07, but there's
see?
been a nice
I mean,
recovery.
you do represent most of the people here. How do you see their financing? You know, what I mean, rates are so artificially low. I mean,
well, it's sort of an interesting conundrum because the leverage that most people are borrowing at today is much lower than it was in 07. I mean, boy, in 07, you used to see deals levered up to 85, 90% or more quite frequently and very
with the exception of my friend Mr. Yardeni, he was never.
that's
Of which it's true. We never
and
did.
neither did Mike.
And I want you to
Public company, they never had that kind of leverage.
And I want you to know
they're
that.
so lucky. I mean, they're a great company. No, but I
more
mean,
than
no, lucky in a different manner that they've been able to tap the capital markets of the public markets. That's what
Sure.
I'm talking by luck.
But the public markets
they're
dictate
good,
a certain kind of conservatism
Right.
in their balance sheet and how they finance their properties, and that's, you know, and it makes it a more level in type of investing that they do. But to answer your question, there's great financing available today for good properties. You know, what was rather incredible back in 07 was almost anything could get financed. So we're spoiled here in New York. Our firm has 30 offices around the country. I'm here. I mostly work on
but
New
you're
York
global.
things.
I mean, you're the
We
global
are.
head of real estate also.
So that's why I'm saying around the country, they don't have the luxury of having the kind of financing available for projects that we have here in New York, because everyone wants to be in New York,
But I
and
have
it's-
two people
it's
over
pretty safe.
here. Larry just is opening up a brand new hotel in Beverly Hills. Mike, you're in all the states and also in Canada, Mexico, and other markets. How is it to secure financing? Was it easy to secure financing?
Well, we're with our same partners, so it was a continual growth of the portfolio that we're constructing both in London and in Beverly Hills. And my brother oversees that aspect of it with Rob. And I think it's just a continual tortoise-pace growth. So I don't think we're breaking any new boundaries financially. We're just continuing the growth of a good concept that has a sound foundation for about 100 years in residential real estate, and it's a continual growth at a slow pace.
Here's the question, and you know, Kimco, who's been in a variety of businesses, at one time they stubbed their toe and did well, and they went into the hotel business, into the extended stay.
Extended stay business,
Not like
among
yours.
other
You are in the same way as Ofer. You are the classiest extended stay long-term hotel, Ofer, in the residential. You've been in that business. You're in contract to sell that business. Where do you see? Do you see opportunities to go into the short-term hotel business? I mean,
It's not who we are. We stick to our knitting and always have stuck to that. to be at the highest level for what we do, you need to be in the best locations. New York City, we've always identified as our home turf for that market. Beverly Hills is a great fit. It's very much like Sutton Place where you live, Michael, where the only way you get in trouble is by not doing it nice enough. And we've done a beautiful renovation. We've worked with some local architects here and some local architects in Los Angeles, landscape architects. And I think we've metamorphosized a really cool building into a very nice AK offering in Beverly Hills.
Here's a question, and it relates to Ofer's bullish sense of view for next year about people moving in here, the demand and everything. I have this question of how much can someone pay in rent, in everything? You know, how much somebody can pay in retail rent, how much somebody can pay for a room in your facility, how much people can pay for residential rent. Isn't there a level that, you know, somebody says, hey, maybe I should buy, you know, that's one side. Two is maybe I'll put, as I still remember you being on my panels and other things, 2008 when they were eating more pasta and a couple more people were in the rooms. So, you know.
So it's a very, very good question of which I, as the CEO, is looking almost every day because, of course, we would like to push the rents as much as we can. So statistically, just that you should know, we have around 3,500 units here in New York, and we leased around 700 units this year. And the average rent that is on our portfolio is around $3,500. And the average income per unit, because if you have two people living in the unit and you combine, so the average income that we have is around $170,000. And that is a very, very healthy income per tenant.
I believe under Obama situation, they may have less money next year to pay the rent to you.
Who knows? But so we believe that
they're not in the
one bedroom and the two bedroom in the
$250,000
moderate housing, we see a ratio sometimes of 30 to 40%. But now when you go to the rents that people are paying us $25,000 a month, you see that, so they pay around $300,000 a year. You see that their income is $3 million, $4 million, and $5 million. So the more expensive the units are, the less the ratio of their the less ratio.
Right.
So in my mind,
it used to be you shouldn't spend more than 1/3 of your income.
Right.
And they are spending only 10 to 15%, the people that are paying $30,000 a month, of which I feel very comfortable that we can achieve a higher rents. Now, I believe that everybody knows that interest rates are very low, and everybody knows that they can get financing today and they have to put 30%. But I think that after the collapse of Lehman, and I believe that the instability that we have in the world, in the United States, people are not sure that they want to make a long-term investments. And people are feeling more comfortable that they want to rent. And this is also a generation that if they own something, if they bought, they got wiped out. So they are taking it easy, and they want to have the ability to move from one location to another location in a matter of 24 hours. You have tenants.
They can stay 30 days in his hotel.
But he's very expensive. He is 100% rent on the same unit that I rent. He will charge 100% more rent.
But 50% of the hotels around us for the same square footage.
Okay, but the typical guy, our typical tenant today, they don't have even TVs in their apartment. They watch TV from the computer. They don't have telephones. And they are it's very easy for them to move. So they want to experience, they want to move and live in the village, Upper West Side, Upper East Side, they move. So I do not see necessary that the condominium market is going to take a lot of people out from the rental. And so this is why I believe that the rental will continue to be very, very strong. But before that, you asked about the financing, and I want you to tell you that, at least in our business for the last decade, did not change, because we have been financing 50% of our purchase.
But you're different than some people. I mean...
and the only time it changed was after the collapse of Lehman, because the world stopped and everybody was in shock, and everybody couldn't get financing, and we stopped and we watched what's going to happen.
You know, I remember a young Israeli 20 years ago walking the streets of Manhattan as I was walking the streets of Manhattan. And today there are the next generation, not young, some of them are young Israelis, some of them are people from all over the country. And some of them bought some real estate over the last 2 or 3 years, both in residential and in retail, in a variety of things. And all of a sudden, some of them think that I can follow the Ofer Yardeni trend, or I can follow the Kimco safety model, and I can change the tendency, I can do all this, and I'm going to really make money. I'm above everyone. I've been seeing that.
Those are the people who got blown out.
But I'm seeing that again.
Though, the people who thought they knew what they could do.
But I'm seeing that again. Okay?
But that's okay. I'm happy that you see those kinds of things, because young kids will come with better ideas and they will do better things than us. Because the way I look at myself,
became a
dinosaur? No, I look at myself that when I started as a real estate broker, I met every developer in New York. And from every developer in New York, I took what I thought is the best thing that they did, and I applied it to my business. I'm not an original. So those guys that are doing those things, I'm happy that they think they can do it better. I don't want that they will think that they are better people than us, but absolutely they can do it better, because if technology, they understand it better than us, the social media, they know fashion maybe better than us, so it's okay. That's what makes this business interesting.
You know, I did something last week at ICSC, and I started my presentation, I hate to say, many years ago. I was involved with a retail company who had department stores in California called Zodi's, and we had department stores in Detroit, in Michigan, called Yankee. And there are very few successful discount department stores from 40 years ago. Look at Kmart, look at Sears today. And we were talking prior to the show about who has the highest sales per square foot today in retail. Do you have Apple in your shopping centers? I mean, that's $6,000 a square foot.
Well, recognizing that we, again, are mostly open-air centers, we have one Apple store, which is in our Suburban Square location outside of Philadelphia. And that particular center does cater to a higher demographic profile. It's not your bread and butter. Right, it's not your bread and butter garden variety.
Here's what I was saying prior to the show, and it talks about the changes. And retail is per square foot, you know, with Apple at $6,000, and the surprise that shocked me, but you and I read the same article, that Fairway at $1,000 a square foot. 5 of the companies didn't exist. They didn't have retail, okay? You know, there was no Lululemon, okay? There was no True Religion, and both of them are, you know, one's Australian and one is Canadian. So we're in a different world. 2004, you didn't have these luxury extended stay, even though you started in 1967 in there. So where do you see, what type of new entities, or in the retail, or are we going to see type of residential? Are we going to see office, different markets in 2013?
I think the world is, you know, changing very dynamically, and I think what's one thing that I'm seeing, especially being here in New York, for retail, there's much more online type shopping, and for certain types of goods. So what becomes important to those retailers that perhaps sell a lot online is to have places where people can go and look at the things, and then they're going to actually shop and buy them and price them online.
That's what Best Buy is. Best Buy is the bricks and mortar for Amazon.
The other thing is, and it's very much a trend, is as you mentioned, Michael, a lot of office tenants in New York are renewing their leases so that they can not have to incur the very high costs of moving and building out new tenant space. But those that are moving into much smaller, much more efficient space that's designed very differently. And those firms that need to have that kind of space and have that kind of workforce are looking for something different, and the design and the way the space is utilized in these new buildings is going to be very different than where I've been working in the same literal office for the same
here's an interesting
17
situation.
years now.
You know, we've seen storms, we've seen disasters, but we never saw something like Sandy hitting us in November. What effect, in your planning for each one of your operations, will you do in the future to maybe change this? Because I know many of the banks who are good friends of all of us, they said, before we refinanced anything now, we did a new inspection or we're over there. Will you change the way you develop a hotel? Do you see something?
Well, the R1 in the city has helped us change because we have generators at all the properties now, so that's been a big help. I'd love to see the street store taking, every time they do a street, take the electrical poles and put them underground. I'd love to see the government have a 30-year plan that any time a road is done in the city or the suburbs, that happen.
And the interesting thing with our type of product is that most of the activity, most of the burden of responsibility is actually with the tenants who have their own contingency plans. So Hurricane Sandy hit us pretty hard from the standpoint of our footprint. We probably had over 150 properties in the path of the storm from the New York metro area down to the mid-Atlantic states. Yet only 5 centers were not fully operational within 48 hours after the storm. Most of those stores that were dark were because there just was inability to gain access, like in Staten Island. But most of the major tenants that we have, whether it's the supermarkets or the Target stores and Walmart stores of the world, they have their own contingency plans. Our job is just to make sure, and we have plans in place and they were executed, to just make sure that the common areas were cleared. You're dealing with immediate emergency response and things of that nature.
Here's a question which relates to Sandy, relates to the changes that Rob was talking about, smaller spaces. What about cloud computing today? You know, off-site situations, hoteling in offices.
Yeah.
What do you see that?
I think that that's going to evolve. I think there are a lot of reasons for that. One is, you know, just the cost of operating. And, you know, I remember just as a lawyer thinking back 15 years ago, if a lawyer came into my office and said, you know, I want to work from home and I want to telecommute, and, you know, you would try to figure out if there was a way you could do it, but you really didn't like the idea and didn't think it could work. And, you know, I think today it's very different where people are doing it and it's working and you have to accommodate it. And on the other side of the equation, you realize you're saving money because you're lowering your overhead.
So I will tell you a little bit with it. We got affected tremendously by Sandy, our organization. But because of the cloud, as you said, we did not lose even 1 day of work. Our office was closed for a week. We were at 8887, and they closed the entire building. But the fact that is for us, with the technology that we have today, our tenant can look at the apartment online.
I'm sorry, but I got that little signal that we must say goodbye. I need double shows
You
for
should
you.
be like double espresso. You should
Double espresso. But I promise,
Yardeni.
I promise you in 2013 to have all of you back to join me on a variety of venues, and I'm so happy that my apple seems to be very polished and very nice for 2013. I'd like to thank Ofer Yardeni, Michael Pappagallo, Larry Korman, and Rob Ivanhoe, and I'll see everyone next week.
Happy New Year.